firing up, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, good evening, members and officers, and warm welcome to members of the public who might be looking in and attending via our video link. Do we have any apologies for absence, please, Neil?
Yes, Chairman. I have received apologies from Councillor Steve Brown, Councillor John Burrell, Councillor Sue Butterfield, Councillor Lucas Reynolds, Councillor Roger Perfit. If he doesn't appear, he's got a medical appointment and may or may not be attending this evening.
Thank you. He has just rung me and explained the situation, so thank you. Those apologies are so noted. As you note, members may note that former Councillor Ian Armitt is not with us this evening, as he has resigned from the council for personal reasons. A new vice chair has yet to be appointed by the leader, so I've asked Councillor David Moat if he would be good enough to assist me during the course of this evening. Good evening, David, and thank you for agreeing. Also, you may see on your screen Janet. May I introduce Janet to members of the board? Janet is our new interim planning manager who's taken over from Sonia in that role. As you know from last meeting, Sonia has now moved up to become the overall development control manager. Welcome, Jane, to our meeting, and I hope you find our debates of interest. I will be contacting members in due course regarding how you can contact Jane, as you did previously for Sonia, and that will come through at a later time. Members, do you have any declarations of interest you wish to declare in respect of any of the agenda items to be discussed this evening?
No.
I see no such indication. There are therefore no declarations. Thank you. Members, you all had minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 12th of November. Do you so confirm they are a true record of that meeting?
Yep. Agreed, Chairman.
I see no dissension. They are therefore agreed. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, can I just thank colleagues for your well wishes. I missed the last meeting due to a bereavement. You noted that in the minutes, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And thank you for Kelvin for bringing that in. I should have, when I did the apologies for absence, I meant to make reference to Councillor Armitt. As you know, Councillor Armitt and I have worked together as colleagues since 2003, when we were first elected to this council, and at the same time members of the DC board. So it goes back 17 years. As vice chair of the board, Ian was always one who could be relied upon for good, sound and honest advice. And that input and support and wise advice, I know, will be missed not only by me in particular, but by many on this board and in the chamber. So I think, Ian, you should take pride in a job well done. So may I, on behalf of the board, wish you and Lynn every best wish in the next chapter of your life. Thank you. Perhaps that could be recorded in the minutes, Neil.
Most certainly, Chairman. Most certainly.
Going out of sequence. I am not advised of any references from other committees or of any urgent items. Is that still the position?
That's still the position, Chairman.
In that case, we get on to the more interesting part of the agenda, which is our debates. At least I hope they're of interest. The first item to be debated is item agenda 6, which is land to sell for Crossways Boulevard, north of St Mary's Road, Stone. We have one speaker, Mr. James MacArthur, and I didn't see James on the screen. Is James here?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Here you go. Well, welcome, James. You've been here before.
Hi, evening.
You know the procedures. But for those who have not been before, our procedure is that the officer will give an introduction to the application to which you are wishing to speak. After the after the briefing has been given, I will ask the speaker to address the board. They have 3 minutes to put their case to the board. Members of the board then have the opportunity to ask questions for clarification information, after which time you will leave the debate and it is open for members to discuss. So in a minute, James, I'll ask you to give your points of view. After Emma, I think you are introducing the application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just give me 1 second while I share my screen. Can everybody see that?
I can.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yes, thank you, Emma. Yes.
So I'm just going to give a very brief recap of the site area and what the proposal is. So members should remember this aerial photograph. So the application site area totals just under 2 hectares and lies to the south of Crossways Boulevard and the north of St Mary's Road. Crossways Business Park occupies much of the land to the west and northwest of the site. St Mary's Road to the south of the site is narrow, unadopted private road serving residential properties. A public right-of-way, DR7, runs along the majority of the unadopted section of St Mary's Road, providing a link from the site to the adopted highway to the east. The application site lies within an area with a very mixed character of residential and commercial uses. So bear with me. Okay, we've got the site location plan there. It's an irregular shape because of the land around it being in different ownerships. And then just a reminder that in 2015 planning permission for the erection of 152 residential apartments across 3 blocks of 5 and 6 stories remains extant at this site and covers a large proportion of the current application site. So just going on to the next plan. So this is a new plan. And this is quite good because it demonstrates the new arrangement for additional parking spaces over and above those that members saw on the previous scheme that went to board on the 12th of November. I'll go into a bit more detail on that in a minute. Just to recap on what the proposal is. So the application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 7 blocks of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom flats with a total of 258 flats across the site. 4 of the blocks would have 4 stories and the remaining 3 blocks adjacent to Crossways Boulevard would have a maximum of 5 stories. 26 of the flats would be affordable shared ownership, equating to 10.1% of the overall number of dwellings on the site. The main vehicular access would be from Crossways Boulevard. There'd be 2 emergency vehicular accesses, one from here, Newton's Court, and one from here, St Mary's Road. So members will recall that the application was considered at the previous Development Control Board meeting and it was deferred for consideration at a later date. So I'm bringing this to you now, having worked with the developer to try and address those concerns. The deferral was to give the applicant the opportunity to address a number of concerns that were raised by members at that meeting, and the applicant has been keen to work with the council to address those concerns. Paragraph 17 of the board report sets out the list of matters that the applicant has sought to address and for which the application was deferred. Most notably, the application has been amended to increase the number of parking spaces within the development. The original proposal had a total of 272 parking spaces and no motorcycle spaces. The revised scheme before members today would have a total of 215 car parking spaces, so that's an uplift of 43, and 17 motorcycle spaces. So 57 of the parking spaces would be for visitors as opposed to the 14 spaces previously proposed. Referring to the plan on the screen, you can see the areas that's in purple where the new parking spaces have been able to be provided, as well as areas where parking has been rearranged to maximise the number of spaces in those areas. I'm pleased to say that the additional parking spaces have largely been able to be achieved by rearranging existing parking areas. However, there has had to be some encroachment into the areas of communal amenity space and areas that provided a landscape setting. Although that is unfortunate, I do not consider that this has compromised the scheme to the extent that future residents would be left with an inadequate amount of communal amenity space, and nor that the development would fail to deliver a good standard of urban design. So here we can see this top section of what was previously going to be communal amenity space that is now given over to 14 visitor parking spaces. So that's probably the most marked difference between the previous scheme and the current scheme. This area here, you'll see there's a bit of rearrangement there. The developer's been able to fit in 1 or 2 extra spaces. And I think that general approach of kind of fitting in 1 or 2 extra spaces around the existing parking areas has largely achieved this uplift. There's a couple more spaces along this section of the access there. And then there's there has been some eating into the landscape setting there, but it's fair to say that that area there didn't really provide a kind of functional amenity area. So just moving on to the next one. So this is the landscaping plan, the revised landscaping plan. So again, what that shows is that although there has been some loss of the green space within the site, there's still quite a lot retained. So this central space here, and I'll come on to a detailed plan of that has been retained, but that has been reimagined to address members' concerns about the usability of a formal children's play space. That part of the linear communal space has been retained, and there's picnic benches there. And then these areas here are for ecology. So there's actually quite a lot of space there that's going to be out of bounds really for local residents, but will provide an ecology value. So this is a close-up of that linear communal space with the 14 parking spaces at the top. And you'll see there that the developers work quite hard to make the most of what that space is there. And I think with the picnic benches and some decent soft landscaping, it could actually be quite a nice, quiet environment for residents to enjoy it as a leisure space. And then this is a close-up of that central space there, where all of that formal play equipment has now gone, in favour of, you've got more natural play boulder features, you've got the balancing logs, so that's kind of a lot more informal play. You've also got picnic tables, and this here is a play mound, but it's going to function far more, it's going to cater far more for a wider age range, I think, within the development, sort of be able to provide a bit more of a leisure area as well as play space. So that, again, I think members will remember those images from before. That hasn't changed. The elevations have stayed the same. The layout has stayed the same. It's just that the developer has managed to rejig those parking areas. So a lot of the other matters that members deferred the application for are addressed in the report at paragraphs 19 to 22. Happy to go into those in a bit more detail or answer any questions if members have them. But I am happy that the detail that has been provided by the developer between the last board meeting and this board meeting does address members' concerns and the reasons for deferral. So my recommendation to members is therefore that this application should be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report and a Section 106 agreement covering the matters referred to in the report at paragraph 137. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. Mr. MacArthur, you have 3 minutes to address the board. You wish to speak in support of the officer's recommendation.
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Fine, thank you.
Excellent. Good evening, members, officers and the public. I'm Jamie MacArthur, one of the divisional planning managers from Bowie Homes. the Thames Gateway Division. Thank you again for the opportunity to address committee. We welcome the officer's recommendation and feel this is a reflection of the positive dialogue we had between members at the last committee and obviously with officers. Again, there's no other speakers, and obviously we discussed this at quite some length last time, so I will try and keep this very brief and just focus on the 8 points we reviewed last time. Confirmation that there will be 4 car club spaces and not the one as originally proposed. The 1 month bus pass, which increased from 1 week, including the pass will be for both bus routes, which I believe are called A and B. The fast track bus stop, and we've had no response from fast track, but the bus stops are quite logically placed already in suitable locations. The nearest bus stops in either directions are both within a short walk, and also the access road into the site would limit where the bus stops would go. But we will, we can continue those conversations with fast track. And also, we certainly wouldn't want to slow the bus route down. We're having those 2 bus stops in quite close distances. We have increased the number of motorcycle spaces by 17. We have agreed the viability review, which is based on not to go beyond, if we don't get to the ground floor slab in 2 years, to look at viability review, and the inclusion to offer Dartford Housing team the option to take on the affordable. That is already been actioned, and we are having conversations. And the most important one, which was point 7, working towards increasing parking spaces. That has increased by 43 additional visitor spaces, and we have redesigned some of the permeable paving, so that is in the road, so that reduces the infiltrated groundwaters. And obviously, as the case also mentioned there, we've limited the amount of green space, and we've redesigned the play area. And the final point is the car park management plan. That will be detailed, and that will talk about electric charging points and where they are and how the management of so if you remember, there was some of the 1 beds will have unallocated spaces, so that's already been agreed. So just to remind you of the benefits again of the scheme, we have community and business space for residents integrated into the foyers. We have committed to offering and launching a Dartford First choice. The scheme delivers over £3.7 million worth of SIL. We've got 20% electric charging points, and it's conditioned about their locations, and that will come later on. The scheme offers good entry level homes for first time buyers, local workers and downsizers, and obviously we'll be promoting the travel plans to promote to the site's good transport links. The scheme's been obviously supported by officers, and we respectfully request the application be approved in accordance with the officers' recommendations, and I'm, of course, more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions you wish to put to the speaker for information or clarification? I see. Yes, Councillor Edie. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry, is it James or Jamie?
Jamie or James, either one.
Sorry. Yeah, a couple of questions. In terms of the ecology, the site that you're keeping particularly for that, that's really positive, because that wasn't there on the previous plan, was it?
It was in the corner north of the pump station. Yeah. So that's all been retained. We haven't touched that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
can I ask what guarantee that will be that long term for that site to remain as it is?
Well, it's within the obviously the planning drawings. We can't access that site. It is constrained. So and as part of the ecology plans, that is part of the works we are carrying out. In addition to obviously installation of birds boxes. But yes, there's no plans to use that site because it is constricted with the pump station. So you can't access it essentially.
Okay. And the other question I was going to ask, I'm not sure if this is in the details of the plan. I'm sorry, but I wondered how much in measurement, how much green space has been lost through the extra parking in a measurable amount, please.
Emma?
Chairman, will you permit me to answer that?
Yes,
I
of course.
kind of
Yep.
preempted that might be a question. So the space that's lost at the top of the linear park is approximately 280 square metres. And then there's sort of little bits here and there. So I'm not sure as a percentage.
Okay, thank you. And there was one more question for me. More? Oh, yeah, that's
Yep,
fine.
still there.
Oh, you're here. Okay. The other question. Now, this is something I wasn't on the first board where it was decided, obviously, for 152 residential properties in this site. Is that correct? The 152.
I believe it was 152. Yes.
52. And now, I was curious. I don't know if this is a question you can actually ask, but how would the jump go from that to an extra 106 within the same space? But it feels like you've not extended the actual buildings themselves. So I wondered if it's you've gone higher up or if the space is more smaller.
We bought additional land so that the land intake is larger.
Oh, okay.
So there's extra land that's been assembled to allow the extra units.
Right. Okay. That was all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eadie. Any other councillor? Councillor Moat.
Oh, Councillor Garden was before me.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Councillor. Pardon. Councillor Garden.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie, as a member of the Fast Track Advisory Board, I was disappointed that you had got nowhere with them. So I've actually got on the phone, I've spoken to the Fast Track Development Manager, and I'm pleased to tell you that at the next Fast Track Advisory Board in March, there will be a proposal to move the nearest eastbound stop nearer to the development as part of a complete analysis of the stops we have on the boulevard. So I'm hopeful that in March we will be able to meet. It was one of the things I suggested, and I'm sure something you wanted to come forward. And so I'm sure that Sonia, who's on the board with me, will actually support this particular suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor. It doesn't obviously affect the consideration for this application, but it is useful information, and hopefully it may bring a benefit if it is possible to do that. Thank you. Councillor Moat.
Thank you, Chair. My question really is that, well, first of all, thank you very much for what you've done. I think you and the officers have worked together extremely well to come up with this, what I think is a far greater and improved plan. But my question really is around the questions of viability, because this was something we also did mention, and you've also mentioned. So the changes that we asked and you've actually suggested whether it can be put in there, will it actually impact on viability and the affordable housing levels?
There has been an impact, but we've retained the offer that we presented at committee last time, so it does stay the same.
Thank you.
With the viability review clause as well.
And the affordable housing?
That's 10% with the 80-20 split.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions of the speaker? Sorry, Councillor Oliver.
Hi there. Thanks, Jamie. It's a much improved report. I'll agree with that. Just something else on the buses. I think because of the location, it's really important, you know, that the buses are accessible. But I just want to check with you that you're going to be sort of really upfront with residents that it'll only last a month. You know, it's really welcome that it's been extended to a month now. But you know, I think it's important that we're clear with people moving there that it is only for that 1 month, because we don't want people, you know, going out immediately buying cars and filling up the development. So I just wanted to be sort of clear that you'll be doing that.
Yeah, it's so it'd be part of the travel plan that we will essentially hand over to residents, and as part of the essentially the sales package that will be included in that, so they are aware straight away that that's a benefit they will get.
Thank you. Any other member? In that case, thank you very much, Jamie. It is now open for debate. Any member?
Chairman, Just for
Yes, Councillor Moat.
I noticed that there's indication that Councillor Butterfield is waiting in the waiting room, but my understanding is that because we've started the debate, she won't be allowed into this particular part of the meeting.
No, she can come to the meeting, but she can't take part in the vote.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I can just assist, she is not appearing in the waiting room at the moment, so I currently have nobody trying to join the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, Alan, we're using the Zoom and that. If a member does join the meeting after we've started the debate, would you please make sure it's brought to my attention, because as Councillor Moat has said, they can not take part in the vote if they haven't heard the whole of the debate. So any member joining at this particular time will be excluded from the decision on this particular application. Thank you, David, for bringing that to my attention. Councillor Garden, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the creative work that the developer's done to create additional parking spaces. However, I still have two issues with these. The first one is the wheelchair spaces. I'm very disappointed to see that they're at the back end of the development. Our parking standards do recommend that they are near the entrances to the building that the wheelchair users intend to use. And so having them tucked away at the back, I believe, means it doesn't meet that particular requirement. And also I'm concerned that it does give the impression that, well, we've had to do them, you're at the back, we'll put them in, you should be grateful. That may not be the intention, but that's the way it looks. And so I really would like to see the wheelchair spaces moved, at least one of them towards the entrances and one in the visitor spaces on the entrance to the site.
Emma, you've got a response, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think members have to be clear that any changes like that, it would mean that the applicant has to go back and do quite a redesign. I'd also say that there's no minimum requirement for residential disabled parking spaces. However, we do encourage, and it's certainly something that's in our policy, that wheelchair accessible and adaptable or wheelchair user accommodation is provided as a percentage across the scheme. Now, with that accommodation has to be provided some disabled parking, and that disabled parking has to be located close to where those residential units are going to be. And in this case, my understanding is that they are going to be in that bottom right-hand unit where those disabled parking spaces are located. So they have to be provided in that location. So it's not the same as if it were a commercial development where there has to be a minimum number of disabled parking spaces. I think I see where Councillor Garden's coming from, but the realities of a residential flatted development are that disabled parking spaces are only really able to be provided in connection with disabled or wheelchair user or adaptable accommodation. So that's going to be provided in that location.
So what you're telling members is that they are in fact located in a near proximity to those particular dwellings. And I saw Mr. MacArthur nodding at the same time. Is that a correct interpretation, Emma?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Clearly, that was not information that I had available. And I also believe that we're going to have a problem with van spaces. We've only got 250 flats. There will be more than 2 delivery vans there most of the day. And I'm sure some of the residents will also have vans, but they of course may be accommodated in wider car parking spaces. But can you assure me that vans have actually been catered for adequately?
Yeah, so just to say that the Parking Standards SPD doesn't say that you have to provide van spaces in addition to visitor spaces. So the mix of visitor and van spaces is quite flexible depending on what the needs of the development are. And looking at this scheme, I think that even though there might not be dedicated van spaces, with the uplift in the number of visitor spaces and the fact they're not undercroft, a lot of them are accessible on the surface, that actually a van will be able to park in one of the sort of standard size spaces without causing too much disruption, and including delivery spaces, or even if a resident actually owns the space. So I'm comfortable that that number of van spaces is acceptable on this scheme.
Okay, I'm happy that the point has been raised, and members have heard the point as well. So I think that is my observation made. I have other things to make, Chair, but perhaps I should let other people have an opportunity before I come back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see if any other member wishes to make any comment.
I think Councillor McLean.
Councillor McLean, yes. Thank you, David.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be back. Okay, so I wasn't at the last meeting, but the question I have really is for the officers. Do we not have a minimum standard around, or a minimum percentage around affordable housing that we should be aiming for? Can someone just remind me what that is?
Yeah, so schemes of over 15, the policy compliant provision is 30% affordable housing, and that's a mix of social rent, affordable rent, and shared ownership.
So this falls way below that then, with only 10 point something percent, 26, and an 80% of them for part by part rent, and then only 10%, which is 2.6 dwellings for affordable rent. That just seems to me to be quite low. I'm surprised my Labour colleagues haven't picked this one up. This is quite low.
Can I just make a comment before you come in, Councillor? I would ask members if they could try and restrain the debate to the points raised. Those issues, Kelvin, were discussed quite fully. We had an hour and a half debate at the last meeting on it. And of course, one must also bear in mind that viability should not be a reason for refusing an application. So all those issues had been discussed and accepted by members. They were not raised to be deferred back for further discussion. Not trying to put you down, but you weren't during that hour and a half.
So are you saying you've dealt with this because...
Yes.
You've dealt with it. So what was can someone just tell me what the answer was? Why is it acceptable to only have 10% when we say 30?
The pure answer is viability.
Okay, all right. My other question is around the fact it's a windfall site. We have a windfall policy around, because we're meeting our housing supply. You'll have to forgive me, I'm a little bit rusty, Sonia. It's been February was the last time I was on the board. So was that discussed at length?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said it at the beginning. The only matters that members deferred the application for were the 8 points that Jamie went through and that the officer has explained. All other matters were discussed and accepted as being satisfactory. So if you could restrain yourself to the 8 points, which is on page 9 of your agenda. Yeah,
I've seen them. They're not satisfactory for me, Chairman. I'm just saying that. That's all. So,
no, I understand where you're coming from, but we've been through that. No point.
You've dealt with it. I'll leave it there for now.
If you understand where I'm coming from, Kelvin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Madison. I've got you, Councillor Garden. Yep. Councillor Madison.
I'd just like to welcome Councillor McLean's thoughts there. We went through it with a fine tooth comb last time, but I would very much welcome that those 26 units in the one block were all social rented rather than affordable, and I hope people behind the scenes might be working on that for us. It would be very sensible for this borough to actually have 26 or 27 rented accommodations there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Matt, I'll go back to Councillor Garden. He's been waiting, then I'll come to you, Councillor Eady.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's 2 points with respect to St Mary Road and the fact that there is a suggestion that access may not be possible over part of that road. A, for the emergency vehicles, and B, for pedestrians heading towards the Stone Railway Station. Can Emma perhaps convince members that there will actually be unrestricted access along St Mary's Road for the emergency vehicles and for the general public who may wish to walk along there onto or even through this site?
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's covered by condition 13, but no doubt the officer will clarify.
Yeah, so on the pedestrian access, there's two pedestrian links, one that's closest to the station and one that's sort of a little bit further away onto St Mary's Road. And actually the one that's closest to the station goes out straight onto a public right of way. So regardless of who owns that part of the road, they will have free and clear access as a pedestrian or a cyclist to go along that road. And then in terms of emergency access, yes, Councillor Honeysett is completely right. Condition 13 is a Grampian style condition, which says that no more than 50 units shall be occupied until an emergency access. So that could be from Newton's Court, it could be from St Mary's Road, or even, a secondary access from Crossways Boulevard. So they need to provide details of that, and they need to provide us with the legal documentation to reassure us that that emergency access can be provided. So it's covered, and then as long as it's covered in planning terms, it becomes a private civil matter between the parties.
Okay, thank you very much. And just a small point in terms of pedestrian accesses, the word is there pedestrian and not pedestrian stroke cycle. I've had great problems with a different developer in terms of allowing cycles through what was a public right-of-way or whatever. Can I have assurance that the pedestrian accesses will allow cycles and not have to be hopped over some gate or something?
The landscaping plan that provides that level of detail shows two bollards that are kind of quite well spaced at those access points, sufficient for a bicycle to go through. So I'm satisfied that the details that we have at this point in time do demonstrate that cycles will be able to pass through there as well.
That's fine. One of your colleagues and I had long discussions with a different developer over this problem, hence it's sort of on my radar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eadie?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to actually agree with what my colleague Councillor McLean has said in terms of, I know we discussed the affordable housing previously, and it was based on the viability of it's sort of in terms of almost the poverty at the moment that the development had been losing money. Is that right? That they haven't got the affordability to build these. Sorry, I'm not making much sense here, but
yeah, I think the amount of affordable housing, in essence, is the maximum that the developer has been able to show could be afforded under viability. That viability assessment has been checked independently by the council and its officers and comes to the same conclusion. But you remember we did build in a trigger for later on should things not go.
Because I remember, would that be part of the still inbuilt in this, that would the commitment change if the viability wasn't seen at the same level once the developers have sold housing? Would it then change the amount of affordable housing that was provided? Obviously, at that point, it can't, can it?
Refer it to the officer, please.
So the viability review would allow us then to consider whether or not at that point in time the development can afford to provide additional affordable housing over and above what they commit to at this stage. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, so I can't remember that someone brought up that obviously at the moment the developers are citing that they can't, it's not viable at the moment due to the status of COVID and building restrictions. But what my concern is, at some point when they start making profit from this scheme, will we then be able to go back on this and say, right, now you can provide affordable housing because you're not in the same circumstance you're in now? Can it be retrospective in that sense, viability?
So The viability review that members asked for at the last DC board meeting, we have to be reasonable in the timescale that we apply. So I think we've said if the development starts within 2 years, then they have to do a viability review, and then we reassess the amount of affordable housing. So 2 years, I think, is a reasonable time for the developer to get all pre-commencement conditions dealt with and to get going on the site, and before which they have to review the profitability. It is a reasonable timescale.
I just feel like, thank you. I just feel like it's a real, I mean, the developer's saying that it's all for local people and the affordable, you know, for them to have this housing here, and it's just frustrating that again we're not providing a sufficient amount, in my opinion. But thank you for that. My next point was obviously it's positive there's more parking, because that was needed, but now we're seeing 280 square meters of space, green space, that the residents, you know, that would mean a lot to people living in those sorts of areas. That's now going to be lost. It seems to me that is it sustainable, the amount of housing built in this area, in this space? It's almost like it's being squeezed in over and beyond other conditions. And will the traffic in the area be able to cope with it? Thank you. That's my points.
Thank you, Councillor Eady. With regard to the green space, you may remember members did suggest to the applicant that if they could get more parking by the loss of some of that green space, it would be acceptable. So I don't want to go over old wounds, but you're making, I think, general points which I think members would accept in general terms, but each application is specific. I see one or two members maybe occasionally leaving the screen. I must remind members that they must be present throughout the whole of the debate, or they will lose their right to debate. You may not need to be seen, but you must be at least hearing everything that's going on. So will you please ensure that if you leave your seats, you can hear what's going on. Otherwise, I shall have to exclude you from a vote. Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Moat.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that obviously I was one of the councillors that was keen to see additional parking included in there, but obviously we were concerned about viability, about the loss of amenity space, and of course affordable housing, which is something that comes up. But to be honest with you, I think we've covered a lot of these points earlier. We've now also gone through the various points that have been changed and upgraded in many respects, and I think this is a far better application than the one we had before. I guess as a development control board, we have to recognise the fact that we can't automatically stop people building, but we do have a responsibility to make sure that what they are building is what we want. And I think that by deferring this at the last meeting, we have seen a tremendous upgrade in the actual application. Therefore, I would move it to approval, if that is so wished. So if I propose it for approval.
Thank you. It is so proposed. Is there a seconder? Councillor Garden, seconded. Members, I do have a proposal before me that the application shall be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation, terms and conditions. It is now open for debate. Does any member wish to further debate it? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. I can't agree with my colleagues, I'm afraid. I know I wasn't at the last meeting, but for two reasons for me. If this is a windfall site and a windfall development, there should be some benefit to it. The fact it can't meet the affordable housing supply for me is just a no-go. That's all I've got to say on it. I can't vote. I can't agree with them. I'm not going to vote for it. I can't see the benefit. What the benefits are: more housing in an area where we're already meeting our housing supply. So for me, one of the very minimum benefits they could have brought was affordable housing, at least more. 26 measly units in a development with 200 plus. It just seems to me to be derisory, and it's a slippery slope. I can't remember a time that a developer's actually come and fulfilled the 30% because they're all so poor. Even before COVID, they're all so poor. They can't possibly make this viable. So it's about time we start making a stand as a board. This isn't good enough. And so on that basis,
I can see you're very passionate on that, Councillor McLean. I would ask you just to bear in mind that there is a previous application already been approved, I would just ask the officer, does it hold the same sort of a ratio of affordable housing as the one already approved?
Well, I think what members have got to remember is that was back in 2015, and that was an outline application. So at that time, the full costs of the development weren't exactly known. So we did put a condition on to secure 30% affordable housing on that. The circumstances are very different now. This is a different scheme, but we do have to consider in terms of the windfall site. This is not a typical windfall site. It's not a piece of land that isn't sort of allocated. It is loosely allocated, broadly allocated under the priority area policy. It has that extent planning permission on there, so that is a material consideration. And it is also mentioned in the priority area policy that a certain number of houses will be provided in that area. And so it is arguable that this site fulfills some of those houses that have been mentioned in that policy.
Thank you. Am I also right in suggesting government guidance suggests that applications should not be refused on account of affordability of affordable housing if the viability statement supports that? Yeah. So members should bear that in mind, that the thrust of government guidance on affordability and the viability statements, which have been independently checked by this authority.
There's no point of policy then, Chairman, is there? There's no point saying we want 30% housing in our affordable housing in our policy if it can't be a material consideration. It's just
I think that's something that should be discussed outside. As a board, we must consider the policy as it is. Changes to policy are a matter for a separate discussion. But I understand where you're coming from, Councillor. But I have to direct you according to what is the fact. Councillor Maddison.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I sympathise greatly with what Councillor McLean's saying, and there is a concern here because we're looking at increasing this 30% to 35% in the new local plan. And if developers can't get somewhere near to those figures, it does make it a bit of a farce. But having said that, what we've got in front of us tonight has been debated and gone through with a fine-tooth comb. And unfortunately, the 10%, I don't like viability studies. When I first got on the council 25 years ago, and I had my first planning training, at that time, the cost and the viability of a site wasn't to take it into account. It was a no-no. It was the policies that you adhered to. But unfortunately, this has crept in over the years, and now we've got to the stage where reports come forward that has been tightened up on the part of the council, of councils in general, and planning authorities in general. We do now scrutinise those viability reports, but it's all about pounds, shillings, and pence at the end of the day, unfortunately. And you know, I think we do need to somehow in the future tighten this up a bit, but. You know, I think, you know, we've got to go ahead with the recommendation here. I think this would go to appeal. I don't think we'd have much of a grounds to stand on, to be quite honest, if we refused it. And of course, if Jamie could work very hard behind the scenes to get that block of units all rented for the council, we'd be over the moon and we'd love you forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think you've summed it up quite well there. I think, you know, we would all like to go for the ideal, but we're in a world where we are. Does any other member wish to speak? Therefore, there is only the one proposal before me. Neil, it is custom under these video links to do a roll call of vote. Will you please commence?
Certainly, Chairman. Right. I'm going to omit the members that aren't present. So, Councillor Eadie. Are you in favour or against?
I'm against. Can I say why, or can I just?
No, this is a straight vote.
Straightforward vote.
Against.
Councillor Garden. Councillor Maddison.
For.
Councillor McLean.
Against.
Councillor Moat.
For.
Councillor Oakley Dow.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Peters.
4.
Councillor Honeysett.
4.
Right, councillors, I have 6 votes in favour, 3 votes against. The motion is carried, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is therefore approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation and conditions. Thank you very much. May I thank both the officer and the applicant for making every effort to try and meet members' concerns that were raised at the last meeting. I think you have gone a long way towards meeting those concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Take care.
We'll now move on to agenda item 7, which is 26 to 28 Westgate Road. We have 2 speakers, Mrs. Tracy Dixon, who wishes to speak in support of the application, although she will not be present, and the committee secretary will read a statement out on her behalf. And we have a Mrs. Jane Denny, who wishes to speak against the application. Is Mrs. Denny available? Yes, she is. Yes.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. I can see you down there. Thank you. Not easy chairing on these little pictures.
I can see that.
I do apologise if I slip up. And
that's all right.
On it. Sonia, are you dealing with this one?
I am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll just share my screen so we can see the plans. Okay, can you see that? I'll see if I can enlarge it.
Yep.
In. No, it's not going to enlarge. Okay, might have to leave it at that size for now. I can zoom in if we need to. So this application relates to a site in the town centre opposite Prospect Place Retail Park. The site is currently vacant and contains a 2-storey building with a former shop unit at ground floor and a large rear yard area used for storage and car parking. So on this plan here, if you can see the red line there, this is the site. So this is Pizza Hut on Prospect Place. Kent Road is here. This is the Quick Fit building next door. Houses here to the west, and this is Junction Road. So the proposal seeks to redevelop the site and erect a retail commercial unit on the street frontage and 8 apartments with parking in the rear courtyard. The proposal comprises 2 separate buildings, both 3 stories in height. So there's a building to the front of the site here, which is on a similar but larger footprint to the existing, with a commercial retail use at the ground floor fronting onto Westgate Road, and 2 apartments on each floor above, so 4 apartments in total in that block. Then there's an L-shaped block to the rear, and this is in the form of a square block housing 2 apartments with their aspect mainly to the south, this way over the communal garden, and a narrower block along the eastern boundary, again providing 2 apartments, 1 on each floor, which have their aspect to the west over here. This part of the block is set well within the site and fronts the courtyard turning area. So this is the parking layout, and parking for 9 cars is to be provided as undercroft parking. So this is under the building here, and there's a van space located outside of the parking there. The courtyard has been designed to avoid parking and movement on the western boundary, which adjoins the residential gardens. So it's been designed with this build out here for landscaping so that cars are forced to move away into the central area rather than running along or parking alongside this boundary. Moving back to this one, the scheme has been laid out to maximise the separation distance between the new building and the rear gardens of the houses in Junction Road here and also in Westgate Road. So there's a minimum distance of 11 metres from the central linking block to the rear garden boundaries. So this distance here, that's the minimum distance there is 11 metres. And there's a minimum of 27 metres from there to the rearmost point of the houses. The southern block, this one here, is 5.5 metres from the garden boundary, but the proposal here is 21 metres to the closest point of the housing shown on the base plan. The front building does project beyond the rear elevation of the adjacent house in Westgate Road, but it is set 4 metres away at this point, and the projection depth has been minimised to avoid domination of the rear garden. So if I go on to this one here, and I'll try and zoom into this so you can see a little bit better the detail on the plans. So the building has been carefully designed after much discussion with officers to ensure that any opportunity for overlooking is designed out. So windows which face west, so west is down here. So windows which face west over the rear gardens are either high level or obscure glazed. And I can show you those on the elevations, but these are some of the high level windows here to avoid any overlooking. The windows which do need clear glazing or an outlook have been designed to be splayed. So we call those sort of oriel windows. So here you can see that they come out. So the windows are facing away from the gardens and the views are directed either into the site or in this case forward and away from the rear garden. So it's not possible to get that view. So this window here, for instance, faces out towards Westgate Road, and this window here is high level and obscure glazed. In the southern block, the western elevation here has a splayed window, but this actually serves a bathroom anyway, so it's also obscure glazed. And then there's a high level window to the bedroom window, to the bedroom, second bedroom here, it's high level window there. And the main aspect is this way, and this is a projecting wall to prevent any views coming looking over this way, over to the gardens. The windows have also been carefully designed on the southern elevation here, where they could have the potential to overlook Pigeon Court, which is the flats on Kent Road. So again, high level windows, obscure glazed windows. I am satisfied, therefore, that although the buildings may be visible from the surrounding properties, the scheme has been designed to remove any overlooking and domination. So we can see here, this is the elevations. So this is the elevation that faces west. This is the front elevation onto Westgate Road. This is the elevation that faces into the site. So this is the linking building, if you like, in the middle. And you can see here the high level windows, and again here. And although it's a 2D plan, so it's not absolutely easy to show the sort of splayed windows on a plan, they are here. So although they're shown, actually, they're not going to appear obviously facing that direction. So the development is a windfall site, but it lies within the town centre priority area, and it's sustainably located very close to the town centre, facilities and public transport. The redevelopment of this site in this prominent location meets the objectives of the core strategy and the town centre framework to revitalise and regenerate the town, and also to increase spend in the shops and businesses by creating a larger town centre residential community. The scale and massing of the buildings is considered to be proportionate to the town centre location, and its appearance is fitting for its frontage on the ring road. The detail of the build, of course, will be critical to the quality of the development, and a number of planning conditions have been suggested to ensure this as the development comes forward. So the next plans, just to show different elevations. So this is actually showing the same elevation, but it is showing the existing buildings and one of the outbuildings on the drawing as well, really. So the quality of the accommodation provided meets the national space standards and the requirements for accessible and adaptable dwellings, and provides private and communal amenity space. It also meets the parking standards for dwellings and provides 2 spaces for the use of the commercial unit. I consider, therefore, that the proposal complies with the adopted planning policy and I have not identified any harm arising which would justify the refusal of planning permission. I recommend, therefore, that planning permission is granted for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Jane Denny, you wish to speak against the officer's recommendation. You have 3 minutes to put your views to the board.
Okay, well, thank you. I probably have questions now. I've just seen the plan, but I will go ahead with what I had intended on saying, and maybe some of that gets adapted, I'm not sure. So first of all, we live literally, we back onto almost where that proposal is going to be, our garden here. So our first major concern, we have 4 of them. They fall into categories. The first one is the lack of privacy that we might experience. The second is the knock-on effect of visitor parking and what that will impact on our own road, which is already strained. The third one is potential noise and disturbance. And the fourth is the design and appearance. So I'll go ahead with what I was thinking. I mean, we already have problems from the flats that are already there next door, which I think has been mentioned as Pigeon Court. There is a roof terrace, people overlook us, it impacts onto our garden. We literally have people overlooking us and watching us in our garden, and it's very unpleasant. I have a young daughter who's now grown into a young woman who is literally feels self-conscious in the garden. She doesn't like going in the garden for that reason. My partner and I, we love it, we're out there, but it is a constant problem that we have to deal with. It even bothers our dog because they can see people staring at us, and that has an impact on the barking and the stress levels, and we're concerned about other neighbours and so on. So, I mean, that is one of our key concerns. Also, you know, I mean, you've mentioned there a few things about the height, which I'm interested in. We're concerned about losing our skyline and the shade that might, you know, impact onto the garden and so on. But I'm sure you've got things that you can say about that. Noise disturbance. Flats tend to be young people, which I'm all for. That's great, and they have to make their way in the world. But we have suffered from that in the past as well, where we have people partying outside, so on, coming and going. One of the problems that we have on the road at the end of it is there is a cul-de-sac, effectively a turning circle, and it is a fly tipping zone. More people in the area immediately suggest that there is potentially more incidences that could happen on that road. It is a huge problem for us. We're constantly in contact with the council, letting them know. That's one of the concerns of footfall coming through it. The major thing is the parking. Now, I know that there's plans there for a car park, absolutely brilliant. The question is, 2 flats, 2 cars, is there enough cars? Is there enough parking for that in itself? But the main problem tends to come where people have visitors. Is there enough parking for visitors? Because they will inevitably come and park on our road. Our road is already groaning in agony with the fact that we are constantly fighting for parking spaces because people come from other roads and park on it. People come from the nightclub and park on it. We see people get out of Westgate Road where they park their cars and then walk round to their own houses at the end of the day. So it's the effect of having another building in this area, which will put strain onto this road. And then one of the concerns is the design and their appearance. The building which went up, and it looks to be several stories lower, I think what you're proposing. I don't know. I'd like to know how it fits against the one next door. But Pigeon Court has already deteriorated massively. It is grubby. It was once shiny clean on the outside, newly freshly painted cream.
Thank you. Okay.
An eyesore, and it's a trouble for us.
Thank you.
So,
I must ask you to wind up, Mrs. Denny.
We are all for.
Mrs. Denny, you had your 3 minutes. Can I ask you just to wind up, please?
Sorry, I can't. I've lost sound.
So I said you've had 3 minutes. Can I ask you to wind up, please? Thank you.
I'm going to get the earphones.
Have you finished? She's having problems with the audio at the moment, Neil. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Yes. You've had your 3 minutes. Is there any major point that you missed out in that presentation? Because I have to be strict on your timing.
Oh, I was timing other people. That's interesting.
No, members can. It's only the speakers that have 3 minutes.
I see. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to say we want the town to increase the economy of the town. It seems to me that they're just putting more houses into an already condensed area isn't not necessarily the answer for that.
Okay, I think I must finish you because the other speaker doesn't have the opportunity to go on longer. Normally, if I give you extra minutes, I would give the other speaker. Is that okay? Members will have the opportunity to put questions to in, and you can perhaps slip in some of the other points that you may have missed at that time.
Okay.
Neil, you have a statement to read from Mrs. Stacey, who wishes to speak in support of the application.
Indeed, Chairman. This application is a culmination of a lengthy planning process to get the scheme, which is before you tonight, discussed. An application for redevelopment of the site for 10 apartments was refused in 2019 for 6 reasons, including privacy to neighbouring properties. This was followed by 2 pre-application meetings, which steered a total redesign, reduction in scale, footprint, and a number of flats. The application was submitted on 1st April 2020 and has been revised 3 times to improve the design, reduce the scale, and further improve the relationship with neighbouring properties. Residents' objections must be balanced with the fact that the application site is within Dartford Town Centre, where there is a mix of land uses and a variety of building scales which juxtapose to create a vibrant and attractive environment in which to live, but where some degree of mutual overlooking is to be expected. This does not equate to harm. The redevelopment will bring a betterment to the amenities of residents through the cessation of the commercial use of the site, which could be operated to a more intensive level. The concerns about noise, therefore, are unjustified. The size, scale, and height of the development is compatible with the mixed size and scale of the buildings surrounding the area and spaced so as not to be visually overbearing. Regarding privacy, there is no prescribed spacing distances in the development plan. Kent Design used to require 21 metres between facing windows, but now advocates a flexible approach. The space between the development and the properties to the west in Junction Road exceeds 30 metres, which is amazing for a town centre site. The scheme incorporates a range of methods to preserve privacy: oriel and splayed windows, obscure glazing, high-level windows, and enclosed winter gardens. Additional controls are recommended through the imposition of planning conditions. The provision of parking is acceptable with no objections from KCC Highways. The design itself is exemplar. The fact that there are other flatted developments is not a valid reason to refuse this permission. The development will preserve a high standard of amenity for neighbouring properties and future users. The development accords with the development plans, NPPF and Dartford Town Centre framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, you have the opportunity to put at least questions to the speaker, although it's a bit more difficult for the written statement. Members, do you have any questions you wish to put to the speaker? Councillor Garden.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Jenny, you've expressed concern over privacy. There is no roof garden on this particular development. Therefore, your concerns that you expressed from other developments clearly do not apply to this particular one. Yeah. so therefore, I see the privacy being looking out of their windows towards the back of your properties. And I think the officer has shown you the changes that have been made from the previous application, where that the windows are angled away from you. The visual splays have been shown by the officer as to where they go. And just to me, it doesn't seem to be a big splay unless I stick my head out the window. So have we not satisfied your privacy concerns with the changes to the design?
I was interested in that. I couldn't actually quite tell from the plans when you're saying they're skewed, and you say to the back of our house. It's actually our garden that we're talking about, where we spend a lot of time. So I don't understand. I mean, I live at number 8. My neighbour's concerned that lives at number 10, and there are other neighbours on the road. So I don't understand when you're saying the view is obscured to the side. I don't understand that.
Okay.
Members may wish, when we come to debate it, to ask the officer to bring the plans up again to further clarify that, if members are so minded.
Yeah, and secondly,
yes, yeah.
Sorry, secondly, Mrs. Penny, you've talked about visitor parking. Well, what I see here is a site with 1 space per car, which is the standard we have for flats throughout the whole of the borough. This site is in the centre of the town. There are car parks around, and of course, on-street parking is an accepted feature of in the centre of a town. I suggest that if you have a problem with parking, a residence parking scheme might have been approved to resolve that. So I don't see that parking, where there is parking across the road for 3 hours in B&Q and in the public car park just around the corner, currently, and in the new development around there, that visitor parking, I can't see where you have a problem. Can you perhaps enlighten me where I'm wrong?
I can, yeah, sure. I mean, I appreciate your point. It looks great on paper. In reality, what happens is people don't want to pay for their parking. So they come and they park on this road, which is free. If you take there's many examples. And if you were to come down this road of an evening, you would see exactly what I mean. We have constant issues with it. And ideally, that may be the standard 1 car per flat. But realistically, many people have 2 cars. And one of those cars has to be parked somewhere else. It's also the visitors to those properties. We just, the reality of living here is a constant battle with parking. And that is because people can come here and park after 4:30 for free. And they put themselves into our bays, they go onto the yellow, and there is just nowhere to go.
I think we can.
It's a safety issue as much as anything.
Yeah. I think we can sympathise with the concerns you raise, Mrs. Denny. The members must, of course, bear in mind policy, and each application must be looked at in its own right. And the question for members perhaps is that, does this application provide sufficient parking within planning terms? If there's breach of planning outside of that, as the council has indicated, that is an enforcement issue, a matter perhaps for the police or for your residents to look at residents parking. So it is a difficult situation where I think we all live in Dartford and we all are aware of the parking issues. But as an planning application, I would suggest that members, for your information, must look at the application based on the requirements under planning law and not what might happen or what people might do to breach the law, which is...
I appreciate that. You're saying, if I'm hearing you, you're saying it falls within the minimum requirement. Is that correct?
As the officer has so presented, yes.
Yeah. So that's all I'd like to say is what you're saying is what might happen, and so on, is I can tell you it does happen.
Yes. Yeah.
And it causes a lot of distress. And whenever it's ever raised, I mean, we've been referred to all kinds of different people and nothing ever gets done about it. And there are things that could happen. The development that's going to go on, the big one from the Mews, We went and spoke at that meeting, and one of the key issues again was the knock-on effect of parking here, and the Muse promised that they would come to the council to raise that and speak about the issues, because it's stressful.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
of course,
I don't wish to cut you down in prime. I think we do understand where you're coming from, but as a planning board, we must restrict our concerns to this particular application. You're bringing up a lot of wider issues on parking and planning, which parking within Dartford, which we all, I think, acknowledge, but there are other avenues and areas and committees to which you should refer that. As been said before, you might wish to talk with your ward councillors about a residence parking scheme, for example, if that is one you might.
We do have a residence parking scheme. It just doesn't work very well.
Yes, and then that may be a question for enforcement, and one of the councillors sitting at this board is very much into enforcement, and I'm sure he will be making a note of your concern there. But I just think I don't want members to be sidetracked or give you false sense of security.
No, I heard
we must look at the application based on planning terms. Any other member wish to ask any points for information or clarification? I see none. Thank you, Mrs. Denny. Members, it is now open for debate. Any member? Councillor Maddison.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I can see the problems that local residents have got from what Mrs. Denny has explained to us, and I think we're all aware of the difficulties of parking and that round the town centre and that. Yep. I'm a bit more concerned, Chairman. I'd like to hear from the officers the aspect for the people that would be living in these flats, particularly the ones at the rear. It seems that I'd want to purchase a flat that was reasonably spacious and had windows that I could look out and look on to whatever was outside. The ones on the front I go along with, smashing, great. Now, I had a training module the other day with Kent Design Team, and they were saying this very thing, that what we've had with COVID and that, people need a bit more light and air and roominess in their properties. And these windows, I'd like you to demonstrate to me somehow that these windows would be suitable, for people living inside the property. I think it's, well, it looks like.
I think you made your point, Councillor. I think there's 2 points there. Are the flats of the required standards in size, and whether the outlook from the flats is satisfactory for the new residents? I think they're the 2 points you raised, Councillor. Sonia, can you respond, please?
Yes, it's probably easier if I show the plans again, if that.
Yep.
Bear with me.
And it may help Mrs. Denny looking at the angles too.
Okay, let's go back. I can move. Yeah. So this is a plan of the first floor. If I zoom in, it's going to work. There we go. So to answer Mrs. Denny's query, actually, while we're here, her property is backs on here. I think number 8 is about here. So this is the property at the back. This is the end wall. As I explained, there's a splayed window here. So this is the orange is the wall of the building, and this is a window. But as you can see from the layout, that actually serves a bathroom. So that is a splayed window, but it's obscure glazed. And the window here to the bedroom is high level. So there's no overlooking out of it. Again, this is wall here, and then the windows will look that way. So in terms of these windows, they've obviously got enough aspect. It's just simply not looking over the gardens of Junction Road. And the same at the back here. These properties, they're high level here to the sort of winter garden amenity area, but this aspect is open and they can look that way, clear glazed, and same with the bedroom. So that the aspects here, these are the 2 flats. I think that the report actually does acknowledge that perhaps the amenity areas are not as good as we might like, that because of the requirement that they are obscure glazed in this area. So the flats do meet space standards, they meet national space standards, and the reason for these splayed windows is to ensure they do have clear glazed windows. and an outlook. And so the outlook is here, it's over the courtyard. So instead of normally, if you didn't have that splay there, you'd have a flat wall and the outlook would be this way. Actually, they're being forced to look over this way. So there's still that outlook, there's still light to those windows, they're not at all enclosed. It's simply that the direction of view is being angled. And that's what all these lines are on the drawing here. You can show the sort of direction of view out of these windows. So
sorry to interrupt, would you mind explaining what splayed means?
Oh. Yeah, I shouldn't. Yes. Okay. Please, can you just explain that, please? Sonia?
Yeah. So again, the orange on this plan is the solid walls of the building, and normally a wall would be flush like that. In order to redirect the views out of the windows, the wall has been splayed of the building so that then the window is not on the same plane as the main building wall, but it's splayed outwards. And so that forces, if you were standing behind that window, it prevents you looking directly westwards. And so your view is being forced out a different way, really. So splayed really means just the angle of the wall is splayed instead of being flush and level across. So these ones are sort of flush, straight walls, and these you can see with the orange, they're being splayed. Parts of the walls are being splayed, or parts of the building being splayed so that the windows face a different way. Does that help?
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, I think the answer is that the windows are at an angle rather than flat. The other point the councillor raised was about amenity and COVID. Of course, there was a community amenity space in the development. Would you just point that out?
Yes, so that's right. These ones, they've all got private amenity spaces, but there's also this area here. Actually, if I go back, you can see it better on the layout plan, probably better on this plan. There's a communal amenity area there, it's here. So for a small development like this, and given that all the properties have got some level of private amenity space, that's a good area of communal garden, which is accessible from the courtyard, accessible to all the flats.
Thank you. Can we go back to members, please, on the screen? Thank you. Councillor Madison, you want to come back?
It's getting some idea of the size of the windows. You're talking about windows that are 5 or 6 foot high at that height, at that level. So they've got to be windows that you have a job seeing out of, haven't you? You know, it doesn't seem, you know.
Shall I share it again? No, some of these the high level windows, absolutely, that's the purpose, that you can't see out of them. But those windows that are actually splayed, you can't see it very well because they are on a, like I said, it's a 2D plan and they're on an angle. But those windows where they're clear glazed are actually full length windows. Right. So they're on an angle, you can't see westwards, but they're full length glazed windows. These are the high level windows, and the purpose of those is absolutely to stop any overlooking. But there's usually, where there's a high level window, there's usually another window that allows directed looking in a different location.
I mean, we have been looking at making sure that flats in future do have balconies and that, and we've not got much chance here, have we? Anyway, thank you very much, Sonia, for your explanation.
Thank you, councillor. Can I go back to councillors, please? Any other councillor?
Councillor Eadie.
Councillor Eadie, yep.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Yeah, I feel for you, Jane, in terms of the parking situation. But as we said, it's perhaps you need some more enforcement in your area if the scheme's not working particularly. So my point was, in terms of the environmental health report, I see that their air quality has been raised as a concern. We've all seen in the news recently the sad case of a 9-year-old who has died officially from an air pollution that was ruled as a cause of her death. And Dartford Town Centre is an air quality management area in Dartford. So I see it says on the report that a cost analysis is undertaken, but it's saying that we don't need to do that because of electric charging points on the site. So I just wondered if I could hear more about how that conclusion's come to, please.
Okay, what happens? There's there's a methodology that can be used, and it's something that we try to use. It's been bought by Kent Air Qualities Group, I think, and it's a methodology we usually use on sites. And that is that you consider the impact of the development. This is about what impact the development has on air quality, rather than the impact of the roads on the development. There's two different issues. So this is about the impact of the development on air quality. And what you'd look at is the existing use of the site and what impact that already has on the roads. So obviously it was a commercial site until recently, with vans, visitors to the site, and you offset that against what the proposed use would be, residential, with that number of parking spaces, whatever else might come out of it in terms of commercial boilers, all that type of thing, what impact they would have on the air quality. And then out of that, there's a calculation that is used that produces a sum of money, basically. So it's the impact of the development on the air quality that equates to a sum of money. We then use that sum of money to ensure we get appropriate mitigation. So so the cost of the mitigation is the sum of money that comes out of the development. So on a large development, that cost be quite considerable. So it could be additional mitigation, tree planting, electric vehicle spaces, different types of boilers, also different types of mitigation. In this case, what the officer's saying is, actually, it's a small scheme. There's already a use on the site. If we did that calculation, there would be a requirement for mitigation, but that would equal the cost, and probably less than the cost of the electric vehicle charging points. And this scheme does provide electric vehicle charging points. So essentially they've already mitigated it. We don't need to go through making them go through the quite costly process of assessing it and coming up with a cost, really, because the cost is incorporated. They've already done the work and put it into the scheme. So it does have your electric vehicle charging points, which is the mitigation, and the level of parking as well, really, and the fact that it's near to bus stops. You would hope that would encourage people to have less cars, that then actually will have less impact on the air quality.
Oh,
could I just say something on the car parking as well, just to remind members? Some members may know. The council has agreed to use some of the SIL funding in Dartford Town Centre that normally goes to, so some of the SIL funding, if it's in a parished area, a proportion will go to the parishes. In areas such as the town centre, there's a percentage of the SIL that is unparished and doesn't obviously go to a parish or a town council. And there's been agreement by the council to use some of that funding to look into car parking zones, and how we manage parking on the streets in the town centre. So we've recently employed a parking officer to look at that, and that's a 2-year contract, and his key part of his role is to assess the impact in parking in and around the streets in the town centre, from residents, from commuters. Look at that, assess what the issues are, and then look at what we can do to mitigate those issues, really. So that's at early stages. We've only recently appointed someone, but he's there looking at that at the moment. So the next phase will probably be assessing what the issues are, and then it will go out to residents for consultation, and they'll have their right to say what the issues are, what their concerns are, and whether they are happy with the solutions that have been put forward.
Thank you, Sonia. I hope, Mrs. Denny, that gives you a little more confidence of going forward. Councillor Eadie, did you have something you wanted to come back on?
No, that's so.
That's fine,
it
thank you.
was. Yeah, so
I just
it's not
thought
for
it
the.
may have indicated. Any other
Yeah.
member? I see no member indicating they wish to raise any issue.
Can I just
therefore-
make one final comment, please, about what
I'm afraid not, otherwise I'll be breaching our protocol. You're only allowed the original presentation. I've been quite
It's
lenient with
direct response to what's just been said.
No, I'm afraid I can't. If I do it to you, Mrs. Denny, I would have to do that to any other speaker, and that would break down our protocol. So I do apologise. If you have something you wish to bring to our attention, could you drop an email through to the planning officer, and they will make sure that it is brought to our attention. Is that fair, Sarah? Am I correct? Where's Sarah? Yep, if I would be
Yeah,
briefing
so
protocol.
the speakers do have their 3 minutes. So if there is anything else that Mrs. Denny wants to raise, then perhaps you could contact Sonia or the planning team after the meeting. I just wanted, Chairman, while I'm on, I just wanted to check Councillor McLean. I was having some technical problems.
Oh, right.
He's back here now, I see. I just want to make sure he's been able to hear the debates, because I think he's had some freezing problems.
Thank you.
Councillor Clayton, I've been able to hear everybody, just the pictures keep freezing and they're frozen now, but I can hear the speakers.
Thank you.
So that's fine.
And we can hear you, so that's fine. Yeah, therefore, that's okay, Sarah. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Denny, if we seemed a little harsh, but the protocol and rules are there to protect everyone and see everyone gets a fair, balanced hearing. Members, I therefore put to you the officer's recommendation. The application shall be approved in accordance with the terms and conditions as laid out in the report. Neil, will you please take the necessary roll call?
Certainly, Chairman. Right. Where are we? Councillor Eadie. For or against?
For.
Councillor Garden?
Against.
Councillor Maddison?
I'm against.
Councillor McLean?
For.
Councillor Moat?
For.
Councillor Oakley Dow?
Against.
Councillor Oliver? Councillor Oliver?
For. You hear
Thank
me?
you. Yep, just about. Councillor Peters?
For.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, you haven't asked
sorry,
me,
and Councillor Honeysett.
4.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Lucas Reynolds is with us. I'm not sure at which point in the debate he joined.
Councillor
Lucas
Lucas Reynolds.
Yes, you'd already started the debate. That's why I kept my video off.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Reynolds will not take part in the decision. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Neil.
Yes, Chairman. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour and 3 against, Chairman. The application is approved.
Thank you. Members, the application is approved in accordance with the officer's terms and conditions as contained in the report. Thank you, the speakers, for your participation. And Mr. Denny, if you have that further point you want to follow, please communicate with the planning officer, will you? And we'll see that it's attended to or responded to.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, I think Councillor Eadie is trying to attract your attention.
Are you? Oh, right. Councillor Eadie, you do apologise.
Yeah, sorry. I actually thought that I wouldn't be able to object to this on the points that I'd raised, but actually, I can't change my vote, can I now? It's too late, but yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well, yeah, no, well, the vote has been taken, but I think I know where you're going. Let's just, but for the newer members that may be on the board, you can always vote against it. But if you're going to put a proposition for a refusal, you must have material planning considerations. Yes. So, for example, had this been lost, I would have come back to you to continue the debate. And in order to have a further debate, you would have to have material planning considerations, not just because you don't like it or you thought there was something wrong in it. What material considerations could you put forward to refuse it at law? And if you could do that and get a proposal, a seconder, then I would put that to members. If not, I would go back to the proposal that the officer put forward that members should approve. Am I correct in that assumption, Sarah? Thank you. Does that help, Councillor?
Yeah, sorry, you can see I'm new to this, but I would have voted.
No, I was going to say, because you could vote against it. You don't have to give any reason or for it. But if you're going to vote against it and you get a majority, I hope you've got material reasons that you could put forward as a proposal. Otherwise, we're going to have a bit of an issue.
Yeah, no, I understand that, so I'll know that for next time.
That's
but just for the record, I was against.
That's fine. Yep. You for the record, you are for. Right, we now move on to agenda item 8, which is the land adjacent to 31 School Lane, Bean. We have two speakers, and Mrs. Willow, who wishes to speak in support of the application, and a Mr. Rob Johnson, Bean Residents Association, who wishes to speak against the application. Is that Sonia or Emma?
It's me, Chair.
Thank you, Sonia.
Emma.
Emma, sorry,
Okay,
beg your pardon.
that's all
I
right.
couldn't see you on the screen, and I saw Sonia move ahead.
No worries. Okay, I'll just share the screen. Okay, so here is a photo of the front of the application site, looking into the application site from the road. The application is for a parcel of land which lies immediately to the west of number 31 School Lane. Numbers 31, 32 and 33 School Lane occupy part of the site which was previously occupied by the Royal Oak Public House. So there we go, there's the block, or the site location plan. You can see there the extent of the application site. There is number 31. You have number 32 and 33 School Lane there. And here you have the Page Close properties. The rear of the boundary of the application site backs onto a residential parking area, which is there. And there's a small alleyway that runs along the western boundary there. So I'll just skip on to the next one. So this is a view looking up towards the Page Close properties. The front of the application site is here. And here you see the side of the application site. So the rear gardens of the Page Close properties sit to the other side of that alleyway, as I showed you, and they have a ground level that's around 1 to 1.8 metres higher than the application site. So there you can see into the application site itself. And although the site was included as part of the side garden of number 31 School Lane at the planning application stage, it has been established through subsequent planning applications and an appeal that the land that was the subject of that planning application has never been used as garden land in connection with that dwelling and therefore has a nil use. So this is the block plan, and it shows that planning permission is sought for the erection of a detached bungalow that's designed internally to be suitable for a wheelchair user. So there you see, here's the proposed bungalow with a dual pitch roof. You have 2 parking spaces to the front, and then the vehicular access is off School Lane and the garden to the rear. So here's the elevation. You've got 31 School Lane here, and this is the proposed bungalow sitting to the side there. So it would be single story, obviously, and it would have 1 bedroom, accessible shower room, kitchen, dining, living room, all at ground floor level. Going back to the block plan, so you've got there the rear garden is a depth of 7.8 metres, and you've got parking for 2 cars at the front, including that disabled parking space. So we have a landscaping plan submitted with the application. Apologies, it's sort of now flipped round, so the orientation is different. So you've got School Lane up to the top there and the rear garden there. So that shows that there would be planting all the way along the boundary. There's 1 conifer tree to be retained there, and then the planting would come all the way around to the front with another substantial tree planted there, and then in the rear garden. So just go back to the block plan. So members will be aware, or may be aware, that there was a previous application on this site which was in 2018, and that was recommended by officers for approval but overturned by members at the Development Control Board. And the reasons that members gave for refusal were based on the inappropriate development of garden land, resulting in harm to the character of the local area, the overdevelopment of the site and the loss of space between buildings, overbearing and out of character, leading to loss of trees and opportunities for landscaping, and a harmful windfall development. So the applicant appealed against that decision, and the appeal was dismissed by the inspector. They dismissed the appeal on the grounds that the development would have significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. The application that's before you now is a revised scheme which has been reduced and amended to address the inspector's concerns. So the report before members considers the proposal against our windfall policies and concludes that the development would be in compliance. And of note is the acceptance in the past planning appeal decisions and planning permissions for this site that the adjacent residential properties were considered to be sustainably located. Therefore, this site is considered to be sustainably located. The land has been established by the planning inspector of the appeal that I just referred to as not being garden land, and so therefore falls back to being considered as land that was included as part of the curtilage of the former public house on this site and is therefore previously developed for the purposes of considering future development. And that holds significant weight in my view. So I'm just going to take you to a comparison plan now between the scheme that members considered before in 2018 and went to appeal. So that's the one on the left-hand side there, as you're looking at the screen, with the very tall, bulky roof, attached to number 31, one parking space to the front. And then the scheme to the right is the proposal before members now. And I think that really speaks for itself in terms of how the development has changed. The scale is significantly reduced. The bulk of that roof, which is something that the inspector commented on, has been massively reduced. You have a change in the materials, which again is something the inspector identified. This was going to be render. The proposal is now brick, so it ties in nicely with the surrounding properties. You've also got some spacing there, and the height, the overall height, is again significantly reduced. So, I mean, in my view, it kind of appears almost as though it could be, from the front, it could be a garage or some sort of small outbuilding to the side of that property. And so I do think it is a lot more acceptable than the previous scheme. The inspector did consider the loss of trees as a consequence of the previous application, and it's regrettable that actually now there's only, although there was a nice line of conifers along that western boundary, there's now only one conifer left. The trees weren't protected, and we wouldn't have wanted to protect those conifer trees because it's just not a species that we would be looking to protect, not a worthy species value. But as I've mentioned and showed you, there is that landscaping plan, a detailed landscaping plan that would really help to green up that site and provide planting along that western boundary. So one thing I did want to draw members' attention to was the update, which is asking members to consider additional condition, condition number 12. Now that says that the dwelling should comply with building regulations, part M43, and then goes on to say wheelchair adaptable or accessible dwellings. Part M43 is actually the highest level of wheelchair accommodation, and so it should actually say wheelchair usable dwelling. So I would ask members if they were minded to approve to agree to that amendment, just so it's absolutely clear what we're expecting to see in terms of that accommodation. So in conclusion, it's considered that the revised scheme has overcome the reasons for refusal of the 2018 application and the concerns maintained by the expector in the dismissed appeal. I therefore recommend that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions set out in the report and the additional condition slightly amended in the update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Mr. Johnson, you wish to speak against the recommendation. You have 3 minutes to put your case to the board.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Bean Residents Association, a chartered engineer and a Dartfordian. I'd like to suggest some reasons why members might wish to vote against this proposal. Firstly, there's no street boundary for this plot. The site lacks its own pedestrian and vehicular access. It depends for access on use of its neighbours' drives. There is no footway outside of the plot. The lane outside is just one lorry width. And as far as the accessible property is concerned, turning would be dangerous, especially for a mobility scooter. The second thing is footprint. You may recollect from one of the pictures you've been shown, which was a comparison of the old and the new. One thing the officer hasn't mentioned that in 2016, the guidelines were for the development to follow the public house footprint, not go beyond the footprint. Now, the footprint was 124 square metres, and the pair of semis, which have been built on it, now numbers 31 and 32, totaled 160 square metres. So an increase of 29% was allowed at that time. The bungalow that's proposed adds another 58 square metres, and that would be a 75% increase over the footprint, which I think is the guidelines for developing the site. The applicant, we think, should be satisfied because he's got 3 dwellings already, 3 new dwellings, where originally there was 1. And I think that this is a last throw trying to get approval to what is clearly garden land. The third point is the tree screen. It's only vaguely been mentioned by the officer, but in March 2020, the inspector said on the appeal, owing to their size, loss of coniferous trees would cause harm, and he meant to Page-Close residents, and a new planting only partially offsets the loss. 3 months later, the applicant cut down 7 of the 8 trees, which his own report he had 20 to 40 years residual life with them. And even more surprising is that 4 of the trees were the locations for 6 bird or bat boxes that were agreed with Dartford Council, yet they were chopped down. The tree protection was a condition during construction. There was root protection put in with fencing. And also, the officer wrongly states that such trees were not considered worthy of a tree protection order. That's not true. A tree protection order wasn't pursued, the officer said, as it was considered trees were not threatened. And behind that thought was that the applicant said the reason for relocating a dining room from the side garden to the back is due to its close proximity to existing trees on the boundary and the potential for damage to those trees.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You've had over your 3 minutes, so I must ask you to finish your presentation. Members will have the opportunity to put questions to you, as you're fully aware.
Yeah,
You
well,
may
I
be able
haven't
to.
quite haven't finished, but nevertheless.
Yeah, no, but I must be fair to all speakers. Thank you. Mrs. Willow, isn't it? Do apologise. I'm in trouble with your surname. I don't know why. You wish to speak in support of the officer's recommendation. You have, again, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As already outlined within the officer's report this evening, this application is a resubmission of an earlier scheme which was refused consent and subsequently dismissed at appeal for a detached one-bed wheelchair accessible dwelling. For clarity, the appeal inspector concluded that the site was not residential garden land and that the redevelopment of this former public house site for one additional dwelling would represent an efficient use of land which weighed in favour of granting permission. Equally, the inspector concluded the site was in a sustainable location, close to amenities, bus stops and the local school. The inspector's concerns were focused on the collective impact of the siting of the building, removal of trees and primarily the height, expansive roof form and the materiality of the dwelling, which he felt was at odds with the surrounding character of the street scene. In order to address these concerns, what was previously a proposal with 2 floors of accommodation has been revised to a single-storey bungalow, detached from the existing pair of semi-detached properties and a significant reduction in the form and height of the proposed roof. The proposed materials now replicate the use of brick and tiles as seen at the neighbouring properties. The height of the dwelling has been reduced by 2.2 metres with a simplified roof profile, which provides a traditional hipped roof structure over the dwelling. The building now appears wholly subservient to the adjacent dwellings and the properties in Page Close. The inspector had highlighted concerns over the large expansive roof area previously proposed, and this has been significantly reduced through the removal of the upper floor accommodation. The building would visually read within the street scene in a similar way to that of a detached garage or a domestic outbuilding. It would not result in any visual merging of built form between the neighbouring dwellings and those within Page Close. The proposal still incorporates the retention of the large conifer alongside the replacement hedgerow planting and replacement tree planting indicated on the drawings. Bearing in mind the single-storey nature of the proposals, this additional landscaping is considered to further soften, screen and provide a visual break between the properties on School Lane and Page Close. This revised application has sought to address all the concerns of the inspector whilst retaining a modest single-storey, fully wheelchair accessible dwelling. We hope members can appreciate the significant amendments made to the scheme to address the concerns and support the application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, you have the opportunity to put points to both speakers for information or clarification. Do I see any member indicating? I see no such indication. In that case, thank you both speakers. Members, it is now open for debate. Any member? Councillor Madison.
Chairman, I must admit, looking at the site, looking at the photos and that, I do see some of the concerns that the objectors come up with. But to be honest with you, it looks a mess at the moment. And I actually think that that bungalow, it fitted in there, would actually tidy the area up. It would look, to me, it would look much better. And I must admit, you know, some years ago, I jokingly said to our leader, we should start the Bungalow Preservation Society, because in Dartford, we're losing bungalows all over the place because they've got decent plots, they're being pulled down and great big 4 or 5 bedroom houses built on them. This is an opportunity here to have a disabled, a bungalow that's got this good disabled access forever, which, you know, in an aging population, I think is a marvellous idea. You know, we need more of them. I can't really see. My thoughts at first, Chairman, between you and I and the rest, is that we refuse this, we go back to the inspector and say, well, what do you think now, Inspector? Are we happy with this? But that's not the way we should work. And I think, actually, I think this would be an improvement. I'd be in favour of this bungalow. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor?
McLean.
Councillor McLean.
Chairman, I remember this the last time. I think I led the mutiny to have it refused, and it was the right decision. And clearly, the inspector backed us up. I must say, the contrast photographs that Emma showed us, for me, was the deciding factor. This is far smaller in scale. It's certainly more sympathetic to the other dwellings. It's not attached, it's detached. I have to say to the objector, I appreciate he says it's garden land. Actually, the inspector's been quite clear it's not garden land. And he's also been quite clear, or he or she, sorry, has always also been quite clear that because it's previously developed, it's not overdeveloped. So I can't see any other option really. And sorry, before I'm going to propose that we approve it. But I just want to say to the developer, clearly the developer's taken heed of all of the concerns and has addressed them. And this is suitable in my view. So therefore I wish to propose that the application is approved.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Madison is seconding the proposal. I therefore have a proposal of approval before us. It is now open for debate. Any other member? Councillor Eadie.
Thank you for all speakers on this development. My main interest was with the tree situation, because I wasn't sat at the last meeting where this was discussed. There sort of seems to be a bit of a conflict in, were the trees meant to be preserved, they were cut down, and I just wondered if that could be spoken about, what actually happened in that situation. Obviously with birds, boxes and bat boxes and things like that, why were they cut down in the end? Thank you.
Can I ask the officer, is that really relevant to the proposal before us, or is that a separate issue? Emma.
Yes, so generally, if we want to protect trees, we need to put a tree preservation order on them. There's no other suitable way of protecting trees, even if they've got bird boxes or bat boxes in them. Obviously, you've got the Wildlife and Countryside Act, so people need to be aware of that and make sure they're not breaking the law there. But that's separate from planning legislation. That would be a police matter if there are any concerns there. But for this application, looking back at the history of the site, we would have, any development that's near trees that we think are worth protecting are potentially going to be under threat. So we would look at whether or not we should be protecting them. And certainly we have done many times in the past in Dartford. We've got a good record of protecting trees where we think they're under threat. Now, in this site, has been looked at over many years and many different applications. And because of the tree species, we just would not protect them from an amenity point of view. If they were really nice native oak trees or birch trees or hazel or something like that, then we would definitely have looked at protecting them. But we just couldn't in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Chair, I understand that there has been objection with respect to including number 32 in this particular plan. Can you also explain why that is included within this particular application? It seems to be in the ownership of an entirely different person.
Yes, it goes back to the original planning permission for those units, and the fact that when they were approved, there was a different parking arrangement at the front of number 31 and 32. So at that time, the approved plans showed parking spaces that were parallel with the road as opposed to at right angles, as is, I don't know whether it's worth me getting the screen up to explain it, but essentially what this application does is it regularises the current parking arrangement that's on site. So if members were to approve this, it would regularise that change in parking layout to the front of numbers 31 and 32.
But the owner of 32 is not party to this. So how can we, in his absence, regularise what might well be an informal way of doing things?
So anybody can submit an application on any land as long as they serve the correct notices. So it doesn't have to be the applicant that owns the land on which the planning application is cited. And I would have thought it would be in the interest of number 32 to regularise the current situation. Otherwise, you know, potentially we might have to consider enforcement action in order to regularise it to how it is. So this application basically avoids us having to pursue that.
Has notice been served upon them, or are we entering into a legal problem that we have somebody who feels they have not had something served upon them and something has been imposed upon them? I'm just concerned that we may have a problem here which we're not fully aware of the implications of.
As far as we're aware, and we have questioned this, notice has been served on number 32. We would accept the applicant has served that notice if they have told us that that is the case. If we've got no reason to doubt that, then you know, that's what we have to accept. And then otherwise it is a civil matter if the relevant parties want to take that up. I am satisfied that for this application, it's a valid application and the correct notices have been served.
Thank you. Given that that person has made observation, can I suggest we do make him aware of the situation, that it has become a civil application, rather than wait for the unknown to take forward? Do we not have a duty to make him aware of that fact, having communicated with the council, which would appear to be a different understanding from the one you have, and that we should clarify that with him now? As you say, you have reason to believe it was served.
Well, I think if the officer and the council have followed the correct procedures, I'm not sure that we should be suggesting that we go outside for a particular reason, unless there's good grounds to pursue that. Would that be right, Sarah or Emma?
Sarah, do you want to respond?
Sorry, I'm in trouble. I'm turning my mic on. Yeah, that I mean, yes, as Emma says, if the applicant is certified on their application that they've served the requisite notice, then we have to accept that, unless obviously we've got evidence to the contrary. I could apply. If Duncan was here, he'd be saying, I could apply for planning permission for Buckingham Palace. There's no need for the applicant and the owner to be the same. I think there's no duty on us to get involved in what could potentially be a dispute between the parties, but it's not a matter for the council. It would be a civil issue between the parties.
No, I'm happy.
Thank you. I thought that was the case. Just for the people who may be watching, Sarah Cotton is our legal advisor to the board. Sorry, Councillor. Councillor Garden.
Yeah, I also do have some concerns about this. I know it is much smaller than the previous application, which was actually hideous. But this does seem to be out of context for this part of Bean, which is characterised by two-storey houses. And all of a sudden, just in this little spot, we've got a pokey little house put in. I do appreciate what Colonel Madison has said about having type of development within the borough, which I would like to see, but I think this one with its access, and in fact I would disagree with the sustainability of it with respect to public transport. It does not meet our minimum requirements for that. There isn't a half-hourly bus service. It isn't on Sunday. It is more than 400 metres away, and part of that journey is actually via a road without pedestrian access. So I cannot see why we have considered this to be sustainable. The distances are beyond the normal. It is going for a disabled type of person, but we're having that where it is a site which is not actually particularly sustainable for a normal person. So,
I think there's a couple of points there, Councillor Garden. You must recall that we recently gave permission for other houses there on a Winfield site where we agreed that they were. So it would be rather strange for this board then to go against the decision it previously concluded was sustainable. Is that correct, Emma?
Sorry. Yeah, that's indeed the case. I think, you know, if we now suddenly go against that position, we would be liable for costs if it went to appeal. You know, we would be called into question for that. changing stance.
Thank you. I'll just make that clear for members that we have to be consistent in our decision making. On the point you make, just my personal view, I concur with Councillor Madison's view. We have very few bungalows in the authority, and I think it's great to see bungalows being built, because it's the first bungalow I think almost I can recall, maybe another one, and to have it with disabled facilities as well, I think is a great addition to our housing supply throughout the borough. So I give quite a lot of weight to that particular issue. Any other member?
Councillor Reynolds.
Councillor Reynolds, sorry, thank you.
I do agree with quite a lot of the points that have been made about the lack of bungalows and such, and the fact that it's a type of residence that we're probably more in need of. I can think of quite a few that have been pulled down and 2 or 3 story houses put in their place. And I know that Kent have not objected on it, but it does seem, first of all, a very awkward junction that has been created. And while Kent have not objected to it, it looks to me a recipe for difficulty, certainly. We're looking at somebody here potentially to move into this property that is wheelchair bound. It's supposed to be at the high standard of wheelchair access, and the entrance that they're being expected to cross, particularly with the sort of vehicle that you'd normally expect to have with a converted van. I know that a lot of this may not be material, but I'm trying to be realistic as well. It just doesn't look, it looks like they're really trying to squeeze something onto this plot of land that is not necessarily going to be the best quality of housing. And I think that is something that's material and that is relevant to our policies. Just because we can put it there doesn't mean it's the right place to put it. And I do have a concern about the actual amenity value of the person that would be moving into this property, where it's located and how it is arranged. Something else that concerns me is the size of the garden. It's quite small, but actually it looks like it would be overshadowed throughout a lot of the day, because the properties that have been built, 31 and 32, are to the south, and they're going to be considerably higher than the bungalow. And it does look to me, from the aspects that I've seen, that it's not going to be a particularly light and airy and pleasant place in that sort of narrow alleyway. So there's some of my concerns. I'm not particularly comfortable with this, despite the fact that it does have some merits in that we do need this sort of housing. I'm just not sure it should be here.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Moat.
Thank you, Chair. I recognise the concerns of everyone. We have bits of land popping up which people want to build on. It's unfortunately difficult for us always to have an impact on that desire. However, we have on this particular case, and as my colleague Councillor McLean led the revolution, I always say Councillor McLean was a bit revolting in that respect, but he did that extremely well, and it went back and it's been looked at and it's been changed, and I think it's been changed to the betterment. It is a difficult situation. Nobody wants to see things being shoehorned into areas, but this is a unique structure. It's not something I think we can argue against too greatly, although that is not the reason to reject or accept it. But I do think it is a far, far better proposition than we had before. And again, it reflects all the other cases we've had on our plate today. All of these, I think, are things that have come to the board, have been pushed back because we didn't think they were acceptable. They have been improved and brought back. And I think this is a very similar one to all the others in that respect. And I certainly will be going ahead and voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. I see no other member indicating. Before I put the proposal to you, I note I have 2 Councillor Oakley Downs on my screen, but no Councillor Tom Oliver. Is there something incorrect before we go to a vote, Neil, or whoever's looking after the screens?
Chairman,
I like your face,
Oliver,
Councillor, but I don't need to see 2 of you.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Oliver has not been in the meeting since the start of this item, and you're quite correct that Councillor Oakley Dow seems to have signed in on 2 devices.
Okay, as long as he only gets one vote. Yes, Councillor Oakley now.
Yeah, if I can just explain, I lost picture on an original link, so I'm on the same device, but I will only be voting once.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify it because I couldn't see where my 10th member was. Thank you. Members, I have only one proposal before me, which is to agree the recommendation put forward by the officer and the additional condition. I therefore ask Neil to carry out the roll vote.
Okay, members, for the last time this evening. Councillor Eadie.
Definitely for.
Councillor Garden.
Abstain.
Abstained. Councillor Madison.
Definitely for. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
For.
Councillor Moat.
For.
Councillor Oakley Dow.
For.
Just the once. Councillor Oliver is no longer with us. Councillor Mrs. Peters.
For.
And Councillor Reynolds.
Against.
Against, right. And Councillor Honeysett.
For.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, I have a vote in favour of the application, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation and the amended condition. There were one abstention and one vote against. Thank you, members. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you.
That concludes the agenda applications before us. We now come on to more of the housekeeping of this board. Agenda item 9 rather are the development management section quarterly data. Sonia, would you like to make any comment?
Sorry, on mute. Yes, just to say applications haven't really died off because of COVID. They're still continuing to come in. We particularly, Emma might like to add to this, we've got quite a high level of householder application for works to trees, that type of application. But we've still managed to keep to our targets, the council targets, despite some of the difficulties of working at home. You'll note that the number of enforcement matters is still quite high, or outstanding cases for investigation. Again, a lot of those are requests to investigate householder works. They're not necessarily breaches, they're just neighbours that have asked for us to investigate, and because there's been some sort of resource shortage within the enforcement team, they've taken a bit longer, but we have got someone on board now to start addressing those. I think that's it.
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, I think it's certainly excellent to see again during this difficult period how officers have managed to get all our cases determined within the target. So congratulations again to the team. And it's good news to hear that we have a new enforcement officer now appointed that will strengthen the enforcement of the authority. And going on to applications, I don't know if members have had the opportunity to see the weekly planning list that came through. I think it was this morning, or if not yesterday. I think it was 12 pages of applications. I know it's the end of the year, people like to get them in, but it gives you some idea of the workload that is still continuously coming in despite the current situation. Does any member wish to make any comment? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just want, on page 100, there was an application for 57 hours.
Are you on delegated ones?
Oh, is that what we're talking about?
No, we're talking about the monitoring at the moment, Councillor. I'll bring you in first on the delegated.
On the next bit.
Yep. Any other member? Yes, Councillor Madison.
Just unmuting, Chair. Just to echo your thoughts, Chairman, the officers have done very well. I mean, I think we need more staff personally with investigations. At the moment, we might go down.
Have a bigger empire, Sonia.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Pass our best wishes for Christmas and the New Year on to all the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, the report is Noted, and with our sincere thanks again to the planning department and team. Please pass those on, Sonia. We now move on to delegated authorities, which are to be noted. Councillor McLean, you wish to raise an issue on page 100, I think you said.
Yeah, not an issue, just
a point. Yeah,
a point on one of the applications on page 100 for 57 Alfred Road. I just wanted to say it wasn't going to be. At first, I'd objected to it, and there were a number of issues, but I just want to put on record my thanks to the officer who did a fantastic job, Jazz. She called me back straight away. She talked me through everything. We discussed the previous appeal. They do a fantastic job in that department. I don't know how they get through so much work. They really have, even under the current circumstances. So just to echo the thanks that you'd already given, Chair, but that's one that I'd had particular involvement in, and I just want to put that on record.
Thank you, Councillor. No doubt Sonia will make that specific feedback, because it's easy to get the criticism, isn't it, when it doesn't quite go right, but it's nice to get it prized when it does. Well, thank you all. That brings us to the end of the last board meeting of 2020. So I wish you and all your families a very happy and Merry Christmas, including our guest speakers who are there and any members of the public who may be listening, and a very healthy new year, and all please stay safe. Good night. Sorry, Emma, you wanted to say something? Yes.
Sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier in the pre-meet, just to mention to members that on the 13th and 14th of January, we've got a virtual public inquiry about the enforcement notice at the land adjacent to the Storefast site, which is just outside of Betsham. So anybody is able to join that virtually and observe if you want to, or if you want to speak, you can. Just email me. I think it's probably best if you are interested in doing that, and I can pass on your details to the case officer at PINS, and then they'll send you all the information about how to join that. I think it's going to be, I've had an indication today, it's probably going to be more than 2 days. But the dates definitely at the moment are the 13th and 14th. Yeah. If anything, it'd be a really interesting one. It's about a piece of Greenbelt land where we are alleging that there is a breach of planning control, material change of use. They are storing all sorts of things on there as kind of like a bit of an extension to the Storefast buildings and the uses in there at the moment. So if members are interested in that, do let me know.
Thank you. Would it not be easier if you sent just a round robin email to all board members, because not every member is here, so they've got the information? Would that be possible?
Yeah, of course.
If it's not too much work, it's just probably just sending through the thing, advising them if they wish to take part to click on the link. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll do.
Anything else from anybody?
Everybody.
That'd be cool.
Anything else? No? Yes, that's it then. Thank you all, and see you in the new year. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Merry Christmas. Bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.